It has been a rough year so far for the Trump presidency, and Congress returns to work tomorrow to a series of crushing deadlines. Congress must raise the federal debt ceiling by September 29th. The next day, funding for the government runs out unless Congress passes a budget before that. The Congressional Budget Office says that if the debt ceiling is not raised, the United States will default on its debt. And now, Congress needs to pass a hurricane relief bill that no one saw coming, possibly the largest hurricane relief bill they've ever passed. Here's what the president said about an aid bill for Hurricane Harvey victims.
I think that you're going to see very rapid action from Congress, certainly from the president, and you're going to get your funding. We expect to have requests on our desk fairly soon, and we think that Congress will feel very much the way I feel, in a very bipartisan way. That will be nice. But we think you're going to have what you need, and it's going to go fast.
Does this situation make you reconsider the possibility of a government shutdown next
I think
month?
it has nothing to do with it, really. I think this is separate.
Before Hurricane Harvey, the president threatened to shut down the government over funding for his border wall with Mexico.
Believe me, if we have to close down our government, we're building that wall.
This is what Trump said 3 days after Hurricane Harvey hit.
On Tuesday, you said, if we have to close down our government, we are building that wall.
Well, I hope that's not necessary. Let me just tell you.
Our government?
Yeah, I hope that's not necessary. If it's necessary, we'll have to see.
Joining us now, Indira Lakshmanan, Washington columnist for the Boston Globe. She's the chair in journalism ethics at the Poynter Institute for Media Studies. Also with us, Jonathan Allen, author of Shattered: Inside Hillary Clinton's Doomed Campaign. And joining us, David Jolly, former Republican congressman from Florida. Indira, the president can't possibly go into September threatening a government shutdown.
I think he's doing that to put pressure on Congress to get money for his wall, because he knows that the optics of not raising the debt ceiling at a time when Texas desperately needs money for Hurricane Harvey relief is impossible. But at the same time, I think he hasn't calculated that many people, even strong supporters of Donald Trump within Congress, like Representative Mark Meadows, who's the chair of the House Freedom Caucus, have said, oh, absolutely, we're going to pass money for Hurricane Harvey relief, but that doesn't mean we have to tie it to Donald Trump's border wall funding. So I don't think the president is necessarily going to be able to ride on the coattails of Harvey relief in the way that he seems to have calculated that he can.
David Jolly, it looks like a legislative hurricane coming for the House Republicans, Senate Republicans in September. What are they going to do?
Yeah, Lawrence, and this is personal for me. I served on the Appropriations Committee. Before I was in Congress, I was on staff. I've lived through Katrina and Ivan on all of these relief packages. In September, we have 3 issues. We have the debt limit increase, which is separate from the end-of-year funding, September 30th, which is separate from flood insurance reauthorization at the end of September. And so all those have to be resolved, and what we are wrestling with, and while this is not a time to really talk politics, even in the aftermath of Houston, September will involve politics, and we are wrestling with a president who in his first 6 months has failed to establish leadership and credibility going into this debate. The truth is, this president's budget has underfunded so many of the accounts that are responsible for taking care of the victims of Harvey, and we can't separate those two. I think this gives Republicans a bit of breathing room on the Hill. They will be a little hypocritical in coming up with a solution to keep the government open and fund Harvey, but at the end of the day, conservatives will lose on their convictions in this debate.
Jonathan Allen, it seems strategically that House and Senate leadership will want to package all of this as just one moving legislative vehicle: debt ceiling, budget, Hurricane Harvey, all together, so that if you want to vote for Hurricane Harvey relief, you have to vote for the other things that the leadership needs to get done.
Yeah, that's what I've been hearing. And, you know, just a simple math exercise, Lawrence. the number of Republicans in the Texas delegation in the House, plus the number of Democrats, all of whom will be supportive of Harvey funding, is more than a majority of the House members. So the Freedom Caucus is not going to have a lot of leverage on a Harvey spending bill. I mean, you have a majority just out of those two sets. One thing that I think is interesting is before Harvey hit, there was an assumption that what Donald Trump was doing was threatening an either-or situation with the wall or a government shutdown, in which there was some trade-off there. I think there are a lot of people in President Trump's base who saw wall funding and a government shutdown as good options. Remember Ted Cruz in 2013 basically forced a government shutdown against the wishes of Republicans in Washington, and that launched his political career within the conservative movement, made him a viable presidential contender in 2016. I think that Harvey changes that calculus. I think the most likely scenario here is that you get some sort of government funding extension, maybe not for the full year in terms of the basic functions of government. Hard to shut them down in the middle of a hurricane. The optics of that are bad, even if you're funding the pieces that go to hurricane relief. You'll get Harvey funding and also see some sort of debt limit increase.
And Indira, there's now a new argument in what will be the budget debate. Democrats who want to increase spending on X will be accused of trying to take money away from Harvey victims. Republicans who want to cut spending or raise spending on something else will be accused of taking money away from Harvey victims.
Look, there's always a lot of accusations that fly in both directions. Let's not forget that many of the prominent Texas Republicans who now want relief for their own state are the same men who voted against relief for Hurricane Sandy. That hasn't been forgotten. But some of the Republicans in New York and New Jersey, like Representative Peter King, have said, well, we're not going to hold a grudge. We're still going to support the people of Texas, despite the fact that all those Texas Republicans voted against our relief bill. I'd just like to point out this is a critical issue. We're talking about $3.3 billion that FEMA has in its federal disaster relief funding. We're talking about how Hurricane Sandy needed $50 billion and Katrina got over $100 billion in relief. I mean, Sheila Jackson Lee, the Democrat from Houston, has asked for $150 billion. I don't think that's really realistic in the near future, but I do think they're going to have to talk about significant money. We're hearing from Wall Street estimates of tens of billions of dollars in destruction from this 500-year flooding. So I think it's not realistic for the president to think, as I said earlier, that he's going to be able to just tack on whatever else he wants. Hurricane funding is going to go through. Senator Mitch McConnell said there's no way that we're not going to raise the debt ceiling. But let's not forget, Lawrence, the latest polling shows that fewer than 4 in 10 Americans support the president's proposal for a Mexican border wall. And that means that that means almost 6 in 10 oppose it. So the president is sticking by his guns here. But let's not forget, he promised Mexico was going to pay for it. So I think it's kind of hard for him to go back on that and insist that the American people should support something that only a minority of Americans actually want.
David Jolly, I think the action in the Senate is going to be relatively simple compared to the House. Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer know how to get together on a package like this that would include debt ceiling, budget, hurricane relief. The House is a whole different ballgame. You have members there who will not want to vote. They'll want to vote on hurricane relief as a separate item. They will want to vote on the budget as a separate item so that they can have their separate arguments about it. And they will very much want to vote on the debt ceiling as a separate item. How does Paul Ryan pull it off?
Sure. So, Lawrence, this is where reasonable Republicans get very angry tonight. And this is, and all commentators are right. To Jonathan's point, the Texas delegation is larger than the Freedom Caucus delegation. But listen, I fought those fights, and it was the conservatives in the House who fought against mitigation efforts, who fought against flood insurance reform, who fought against funding for climate change. It's those very conservatives from Texas who are now going to be asking for help. And while we are careful in our politics coming out of Houston, and we should be, the reality going into September in a budget fight is there is going to be a lot of political hypocrisy. At the end of the day, I think what happens is all of these disaster accounts create an opportunity for conservatives to say, we're going to keep the government open because we need disaster funding because of Houston and because of Harvey. And maybe they punt the harder debate to the debt limit increase and find some way to declare victory on a spending reform that really means nothing. But they can isolate the two. They can say we've got to keep the government open. For the first time, conservatives in years are going to fight to keep the government actually open, and they'll punt the real political debate that you'll hear on talk radio to the debt limit increase. They'll find a way hypocritically to declare success, but it's not actually going to be a success, because at the end of the day, they're going to raise the debt ceiling. It's going to be a clean lift.
And Jonathan Allen, it's not like it's a simple scenario for Nancy Pelosi and House Democrats. They've got some interesting choices to make.
They will have interesting choices to make. I think that they are generally pretty strong on the idea of spending money on disaster relief. In fact, if you ask House Democrats right now, they would like to see the government forward fund disaster relief, essentially to have a much larger standing account for this kind of stuff. They are going to want to see spending for next year, but they're not going to want to see wall funding. And she's got a lot of leverage there on things that Republicans will want to put in a year-long appropriations bill along with the Harvey funding. So it'll be interesting to see how she handles this. You know, the one thing that you've always got to keep in mind is that Nancy Pelosi, more than any other leader in my time covering the House of Representatives, has command of her caucus at times like this. They will do what she asks them to do.
Jonathan Allen, David Jolly, Indira Lakshmanan, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Really appreciate it.
Take care, Lawrence.
Be with you.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.